My name's Andy Kershaw. I was a Royal Air Force intelligence officer and I served for 20 years. I had the standard 2 years resettlement period and left the Royal Air Force in August 2020, but I'd actually been planning my exit for 2 years prior to that. So my overall resettlement period was about 4 years. I started resettlement in August 2018 and left the Air Force in August 2020. My resettlement process actually started way beyond what most people consider as the normal 2-year resettlement process. I started my resettlement in 2016, effectively, so 4 years ahead. That was driven by the change to the Armed Forces pension scheme, which the military were bringing in. Everyone was compulsory moved from the 75 pension scheme in the 05 onto the new 15 scheme. That change in financial circumstances, my financial environment, drove a rethink. And at that point I thought, right, if I accept this 4-year extension to my commission that I've been given by the Air Force, I need to make these 4 years work for me. And that was then the catalyst for me to start planning. So I had, for the first 18 months or so of this extended period, a lot of time to sit down and do the soul searching. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And how do I get there? This then allowed me to sort of start to crystallize those needs versus wants. So I'm living in a military house. I'm going to need somewhere to live and put the family when we leave. What do I want? Okay, I want to be in this part of the country. Okay, can I afford that? And that then spun up the whole, that's what then introduced me to the whole resettlement process, the more traditional resettlement process. I wanted a role that would be flexible, that would give me a transferable skill set that I could move between industries. So I could be in finance, I could be in logistics, I could be in consulting, I could be in a wide number of different business verticals. I wanted a job that was in an expanding and growth market, so there's always going to be a demand for it. So that would future-proof me against unemployment, so providing levels of financial security. I wanted the ability to work from home. Being a dad, I want to be there when the kids go out the door in the morning. I want to be there when they come home in the evening. I don't want to be having to fight my way through a commute. So a job that allows me to work from home. I wanted to buy a house and give my family stability. And to achieve that, this was one of the driving factors of leaving the military. My military pension, my military salary at the time didn't allow me to really buy a house. The commercial salary has. When I was trying to work out what it was I wanted to do, that had to align with the other wants that I had, which were to be able to provide my family a nice house in a nice location. So whilst it would have been fantastic to go and be a scuba diving instructor for the rest of my life, it was never going to pay enough money to get a mortgage and achieve what I wanted for the family. The best way to maximize my earnings would be to leverage the 20 years experience in the space that I already had. So I looked to use my 20 years of intelligence experience as a springboard and effectively as negotiating. I am working in the place that I was aiming to land in when I left the military. I wanted to get into cybersecurity. That was my plan throughout resettlement, and I'm very happy that I've been successful in my resettlement, and I'm now working for a company called 6.6 as a cyber assurance manager. A lot of the transferable skills that I've brought with me from my service career sound a bit cliched. Day to day, I'm solving problems. So to begin with, I need to understand what that problem is. Who else does this problem affect? Who else is a stakeholder or involved with this? Do we need to solve this problem right now? And what does a level of success when dealing with this problem look like? So problem solving, an essential day-to-day skill. Communication, and it's another cliched skill brought by ex-military people, but it's absolutely true. The ability to write coherent emails, to talk to people, to understand people's point of view, to be able to listen, the skill of listening and understanding what someone's trying to tell you. I probably spend 70 to 80% of my working day using what we in the military traditionally call staff skills. So managing people, managing resources, managing programs, understanding problems, passing on information, analysing information. So I'd suggest that certainly 80% of my skill set is readily transferable. And it's only really the other 20%, which is the technical skills, the hard skills within the cyberspace that I use as a result. We bring, regardless of our background, a large number of soft skills into the commercial workspace. 80% of my working day is using what we used to call staff skills. Problem solving, communicating effectively, managing resources, managing people. We are used to being appropriately prepared at the right time, at the right place to do the job that we need to do. And just because we haven't got someone barking over our shoulder and being there 5 minutes before the 5 minutes before, that sort of time discipline, it's ingrained in us. So if there is a meeting, if there is a video call, if there is an event, military people will be there, booted and suited, ready to deliver. If there is something we've got to overcome, something we've got to work our way through, we've got to manage through a degree of ambiguity, we have a mindset that allows us to apply ourselves to tasks that are difficult. And often, in many cases, these are things which are going to be awkward, boring, difficult, unengaging. But actually, we still have that underlying ethos of, right, let's just get it done. Let's crack on, get it done to the best of our ability, and move on to the next thing. When I was planning my resettlement, trying to understand what I wanted to do when I left, I looked at lots of other branches around the military who all seem to have enviable, transferable hard skills. You had pilots who could fly aircraft, you had engineers who could fix things, you had air traffic controllers and fighter controllers who could manage airspace and could transfer potentially into the civilian aviation sector. You had logisticians who were used to moving and planning and so on, had all these wonderful skills. And I was very uncertain as to what my intelligence background offered in that regard. It didn't seem to transfer readily until I realized that what my currency is information. And we're in a digital world, and the currency of the digital world is information. So I understood how to identify, collect, protect, exploit this new digital currency. And once I crystallized that thought, it then became a very obvious place for me to explore as a future career. Whilst 80% of my working day uses the soft skills, the staff skills, there's still an element as a cyber practitioner of hard skills. I have to understand and be able to do certain activities, whether that's doing some form of vulnerability scanning. And the hard skills which I now use in my new career are the skills that I learned through my last 2 years and through my resettlement. When we are deployed on operations, we are dropped into an environment that is alien, we'll be facing adversity, it will be complex, and there'll be a huge number of unknowns. And we are expected to work through those, to resolve those issues and be successful. Because in many cases, we don't have a choice not to be successful. Those skills are perfectly transferable to the commercial space. You can be put in front of a new client who you're trying to win a contract from. You need to understand them. You need to be sympathetic. You need to be mindful of what other suppliers are perhaps bidding for that work. And you have to work through those unknowns. So our operational experience and the agility that we have in dealing with very dynamic situations works really, really well in the commercial space. Our service lives are naturally busy. There's always another manning trawl, there's always another project, there's always something going on. That's what gives the rich diversity to our military careers. In amongst this, you absolutely have to find time to focus on your own goals and objectives as part of your resettlement. We're all taught through basic training, make time. So we have this magical and mystical ability to create time. Please find time in your day, even if it's 15 minutes every day, to do something towards your resettlement. Empower yourselves. Take control of what is going to be your new future. Resettlement is an emotional process. If you go through it without a degree of worry, without a degree of concern, you might be missing a trick. I found resettlement exceptionally stressful My emotions were all over the place. It was an emotional roller coaster. If you imagine a graph where you have anxiety up the side and time across the bottom, I feel great. I've got a job interview. Fantastic. This is good. You get the job offer. Then you get a bit nervous. Am I going to be able to do the job? I don't know. You start on the job. You think, actually, I've got something I can do here. I've got a space. I've got some skills. I can offer something. And then you get faced with something that completely flummoxes you. So your anxiety goes flying up again. So that sine wave of emotion, the peaks and the troughs, it's normal. If you're experiencing this, it's normal. Even though there are thousands and thousands of service leavers who go through resettlement each year, everyone's resettlement is unique. You're the only person going through your type of resettlement. You're the only person who has your family situation, where you live, the job you want to do, your background. So whilst there is a lot of commonality, resettlement is not one size fits all. And for me, a real problem was trying to find the validation that what I was doing was right. And this is why I reached out to military organisations, to charity organisations, and one which I'll champion here is TechVets. I wanted to know if what I was doing was any good. And TechVets gave me gave me access to a brilliant military community, both those who are going through resettlement, but also those already in the cyber industry, who have transitioned successfully. And I was able to float ideas in front of them. So look, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you reckon? And true to military form, I'm very proud of this, you would get some utterly blunt feedback. Don't do that. Do this instead. Or spot on, that's a good way to go. Gaining that validation was probably one of the single most important things for me, because you have so many choices, so many options in front of you as to where you can take your life. Having that confidence that what you are doing, that next step, is the right one for you is so, so important. And that is what helps me manage the anxiety of resettlement. Managing your emotions, and certainly what you could term the fear of going through resettlement, is a very individual thing again. For me, I found that applying a sort of planning methodology, also a military style of problem solving to it, helped me. The busier I was, the more engaged I was, the more I was doing, the more I was studying, the more people I was speaking to, the more networking I was doing, the more things I was reading. That activity gave me reassurance that I was going about my resettlement in the right way. I was going to find something amongst all that activity that was going to work for me. I dealt with my resettlement, approaching my resettlement, as if it was an intelligence question. So I needed to understand what it was I wanted. I needed to understand the environment that I was planning to go into. What is this cyber world of employment? And that, by thinking about it as almost a military problem, I could apply techniques, planning ideas, the estimate process to my resettlement. So hang on, these are tools that I'm already familiar with, and I can apply these to my own unique situation. That gave me comfort. That gave me belief that I could rely on the skills that I had, and made my resettlement easier. As military people, we've been sculpted, molded to act in a certain way, to have certain characteristics. So when we leave this military environment and we step into the civilian environment, we have to be ready to adjust, to adapt. We need to remold and at times re-image ourselves to ensure that we are going to fit in this new environment. This new environment isn't necessarily going to flex for us. We need to be ready to flex for it. And that brings change. And change is an emotional process. It's something that we need to be very mindful of. So if we're having these feelings of anxiety, how am I going to cope? I don't like what I'm becoming. These are actually quite normal sensations. As military people, we bring a huge amount to the civilian workspace. But to get there, you've got to get through those early interviews. And one of the questions which we are not used to answering is, how much are you worth? What are your salary expectations? I very nearly fell into a trap with this one. I had done no thinking as to what am I actually worth? I had nothing to gauge it against. Well, doesn't everyone earn the same based on their experience and their sort of position in a company or an organization? Well, no, far from it. One of the key difficulties for me, and something I still struggle with today, is the loss of identity. I've left an organization which is special, unique. There is a degree of awe in the military held by the British public. And rightly so, we do incredible things. I was brought up in a military environment. Both my parents were in the Royal Air Force, so I was born into the Royal Air Force. I grew up with it. I was sent off to boarding school. I'm absolutely a product of the Royal Air Force system. So then joining it, serving 20 years, and then leaving, the point at which I left, 44 years of my life, the entire existence, my identity had been moulded by the Air Force. So taking that off and leaving it behind, it wasn't just a uniform that was being left behind, it was the entirety of me. And I'm still coming to terms with what this new me needs to be and how to reinvent myself, how to re-image myself in this new commercial space. For many of us, losing our military identity, what we are, what we've become, is very difficult. Thankfully, there are a huge number of charities, organisations that we can reach out to. In my case, for the cyber world, there is TechVets, an organisation of like-minded individuals who are either going through resettlement, have gone through resettlement, and are now in the industry. And it's a wonderful fusion of experience and knowledge, all wrapped up with this wonderful level of banter. It's almost a safe military space that we can come together, learn, take examples off each other, but feel that we're still in a place where we belong. It doesn't matter how much time you have in your resettlement period, whether you have 3 months or 2 years. Use the time productively. Do something every day, something that is oriented towards you, whether that is writing a CV, whether it's reading a job spec, whether it's having a coffee with someone, whether it's having a telephone conversation, whether it's improving your LinkedIn profile. Do something every day. Empower yourself as you move through your resettlement process. If this was a military problem to solve, and you were given 5 minutes to come up with a back of a fag packet plan and get out the door, you'd do it. You've got at least 3 months, if not longer, through resettlement. So come up with a plan that the amount of time you have available can support. Be disciplined with your plan and stick to it.